Alrighty. Now we'll get straight into it. George Christensen, thanks for coming back to the show, mate. It's always a pleasure chatting to you, and I think
Thanks,
it's fair
Chris.
to say that a lot's happened since the first time we spoke.
Mate, hasn't it? Well, and look, a lot of it's unhappening at the moment, but what we should not do is forget about it, because we have been through near 2 years of hell. We have had the worst governments that have enacted the worst policies and laws, all on the premise that they're protecting us from a virus with a 0.27% infection fatality rate. Lockdowns, curfews, mask mandates, workplace vaccine mandates, you name it, they've done it. And the horrific scenes that we saw on the streets of both Sydney and Melbourne, and even in Brisbane, with police that were quite frankly attacking peaceful protesters in a lot of instances. We saw people being locked up in the Northern Territory in particular. We saw state borders being closed, and people not allowed to go from one side to see dying loved ones on the other. Just horrendous stuff done by governments that actually are supposed to serve us. And, the federal government, which I was part of and which I have now left and have joined Pauline Hanson's One Nation, they're trying to make people forget about it as well. And when they don't forget about it, the next thing they say is that, it was nothing to do with us, it was all state governments. Well, I call rubbish on that. I call bullshit on that, because, the reality is the federal government had powers. They had at least the ability to challenge stuff in courts, and they never did. They wussed out. That's the best you could say. The worst you could say is that perhaps they were complicit. I mean, I don't know. You weren't sitting in these national cabinet meetings. I wasn't. The premiers all say that the stuff that they were doing was stuff that was sorted out at national cabinet. So maybe it was. And I could talk a lot more about that, Chris, specifically in detail, but I'll wait until you ask the questions. I can talk about how I believe the federal government was completely and utterly complicit with the workplace vaccine mandates. At the very least, they again didn't do something when they should have and could have. So we can't let them forget.
Yeah, and that's actually caught me by surprise, the amount of people that seem to be, now that the restrictions are easing, which is very convenient a few weeks before an election. But the amount of people that were, completely against it. I mean, some people that were even standing at the protests who are now almost just moved on from it, and they've seemed to have just forgotten about the last few years. And that's what happens. And the governments know that. They know that, most can be forgotten, not necessarily forgiven, but forgotten. And so they bank on that. They know they can make a few bad decisions, and by the time election rolls around, that a big part of the population would have forgotten all about it. But it's important to remember that just how easily they can be implemented once again. And what I've seen now over in France, I'm sure you're aware, with Macron there, one of his first duties after getting re-elected was to impose digital IDs.
Unbelievable.
Unbelievable. And that's a trend around the world. I mean, you only got to Google digital ID and then hit the news bit, and you can read all the news articles about digital. Around the world, it's happening.
Yeah, all coming out of the World Economic Forum, and they're pushing that on governments around the world to adopt it. The funny thing is that, it's not funny. It would be funny if it wasn't so serious. But as soon as Macron was elected or re-elected, the memesters were out there with all their memes, and the one meme that I saw had Klaus Schwab looking like he was sort of radioing into to Macron saying, "Well done, Agent 14, now finish the job." And literally days later, the headlines come out about France now wanting to adopt the World Economic Forum's digital identity agenda. So the meme came true. He's now going to finish the job on behalf of the World Economic Forum.
Mate, pay attention to memes. You know what? People just disregard memes. A lot of memes come true. They're on it, and sometimes
it's conspiracy theories. 6 months between the conspiracy theory and reality these days.
Well, that's right, and we need to get out of that mindset that because a lot of people, I've had conversations with family members and friends who I've mentioned the digital ID to them, and they just go, "Oh, fucking bullshit, it's conspiracy." I said, "Well, it's not a conspiracy. I mean, there's a bill right now. You can go online and read it.
Correct.
It's not a conspiracy. Like,
100%.
by the time they realize it's actually happening, it'll be too late."
Chris,
And
the bill is drafted. It's up there on the website. It's ready to roll into Parliament. Of course, it wasn't, but wait until after the election, and it won't matter which of the two majors in, that will surface somehow. And here's just one very simple litmus test for whether this is good legislation or not. As a politician, no one has ever stopped me in the street, has ever phoned me, emailed me, come into my office, contacted me any which way, even through smoke signals, and said, "There's a huge problem, George. We don't have digital identity laws. I want a digital identity." And I can guarantee you there would have been no politician, no member of parliament, no senator in the country that would have had contact from a member of their constituency that would have asked for it. So if there's no problem, what are we trying to fix? If the public really aren't saying, let's have a digital identity law, why are we doing it? Well, we're doing it because the World Economic Forum has actually asked governments around the world to adopt digital identity legislation. To what end? I mean, there's no burning problem, so why are we doing it? And when you start talking about it, you talk about the potential harms that it could cause to privacy, to freedom, and it's very easy to go from digital identity to a digital identity system that's linked somehow with currency, from a digital identity system that's somehow linked to a social credit system. And as you've said, that you start talking about these things with people and they say, "Oh, that's conspiracy theory stuff." But the UK right now actually is publicly talking about a programmable digital currency. Programmable digital currency. That means that the government, or perhaps even your employer, can program the tokens or whatever it is, that the credits that they put into your bank, the money, and that could be programmed to say it can only be used for certain things. I might not be able to use it to say donate to your show because it's something that the government deems is not allowable. And Italy, a province of Italy, and I just forget which province it was, just the other day, the news came out that they had set up a social credit system. So, you think people think these things are conspiracy, but they're bloody happening. They're happening right now around the world in other Western-style democracies. And so you think it won't come here? Well, the only way it won't come here is if there's a fight that's put up against it. And that's not impossible. I want, there's a lot of doom and gloom about, because there is doom and gloom about, but, that don't ever think that it can't be beaten. I saw the push from within the government that I was part of to ban cash transactions of over $10,000. Now, I was against it. There were quite another number of other MPs against it. We weren't sure whether or not we would have numbers to actually get rid of it. But with support of the public and also support of freedom parties like One Nation in the Senate, we did get rid of it. It was dropped. So things like this can be dropped, but it'll only happen if enough people rally against it.
But what was their reason? I don't know. I'm well aware of the cash ban, but what was their reason behind banning transactions of over 10,000 or more?
Well, look, the rationale, publicly anyway, the rationale that was put before us was that cash transactions of $10,000 or more are largely black market cash transactions, and we're wanting to crack down on illegal transactions, drugs, things like that, and also cashies, the building jobs or whatever that might be done for cash to sort of not involve the tax man. And look, that's all well and good. That probably is going on. I think there's other ways of trying to work that out and work out what's going on there. But at the end of the day, cash is legal tender. And this was my argument. My argument was I did have concerns about where it was leading to. You're banning cash in one respect, and is this a greater push to ban cash in the long term and just go to a digital currency? But logically, here was my argument: cash is legal tender in this country. It's the thing that the Treasury has noted that you and I can trade with. We ascribe a value to it. If you ban it for certain transactions, that means that ipso facto you must be creating another form of legal tender. And what is that other form of legal tender? Well, it's bank transactions. And bank transactions are run by private entities. So here, in fact, was government working with big banks to push us from going from legal cash tender into another new legal tender, which is bank transactions, and making them a lot of money on the way. And I just think that was ethically wrong. But the greater issue was that it probably was part of a greater drive to actually get rid of cash in toto.
Yeah, well, I read something not too long ago. I think it was I'm pretty sure it was from Canada, somewhere in Canada, where they were actually speaking about the programmable card. And one of the reasons listed was that it's good to be able to control. So, for example, when we had our lockdowns and 5 kilometer radius and all the rest of it, they could actually limit you using your card to within 5 kilometers of your home. And that's what they were saying in this document that I've read from Canada, that, it'd be good to control, people can't, and that's something I never thought of, that's, very likely. Now, governments, tend to introduce things in increments, not straight away. Like, they're not going to come out tomorrow and say, listen, we want a social credit system. They're never going to do that. What they'll do is, a digital ID, which they'll say is, it's great for linking up your business to government services and all the rest of it. But then again, 2 years from now, just say there's another coronavirus-like pandemic, who's to say that they won't use that under the state of emergency laws to control where people go, restrict where people go? It's very likely that would happen.
Well, it doesn't even need to be a pandemic, Chris, because I know at the moment it's completely voluntary, but there is a particular MasterCard or Visa card, I just can't remember. Anyway, some form of credit card that you can purchase that has a daily, I think it's daily, a daily climate limit on it. So it calculates the sort of, I'm not sure how it does it, but it calculates the climate cost that will ensure that your own personal emissions in terms of what you're buying and what you're doing won't exceed that which is going to lead to net zero by 2030 or whatever it might be. And it restricts you. As soon as you've hit that limit, that daily limit, no more. And so, crazily enough, there's people that are opting actually to get this card and to do that.
Oh, believe it.
But it's a short step from, they've got it. They've got it in action right now. And so if they're going to bring in some form of digital currency where we all have to have a card, that could be imposed upon us. In fact, it doesn't even need to have anything new. I suspect that in 10 years, it could even be shorter than that, banks will probably be doing this, imposing this on people, because banks have gone woke. They've gone completely and utterly woke. They're controlled by the masters of the universe, BlackRock and Vanguard, and they're woke as well. They're immensely controlling, and I think that we're likely to see this at some point.
Yeah, definitely. Look, I don't know enough about the climate debate. I have not looked into it to know whether or not it's based on facts or it's just speculation. I don't know. I've had a very brief conversation with Malcolm Roberts about it, because he's all over it. He's well versed in the climate change debate, but I don't know enough to make a decision. But I can tell you what, though, some of the language I see surrounding climate is concerning. Some of the language and because it all seems like we've all got to give, the average person has to sacrifice. Meanwhile, these corporations, and not only corporations, I know China are the largest for it, and they're not willing to come to the party at all. So it
That's right.
seems like, well, why should we suffer? Why should you everyday Australian have to suffer if the largest contributor to the problem, if there is a problem, I don't know, is refusing to be a part of it? It doesn't
Yeah.
it doesn't sit well with me.
Well, if we sidestep the debate altogether, which we can, what we can look at is the measures that are being put on the populace out of climate change, and largely the measures are punitive, new taxes. Largely the measures are restrictive, like the idea that some academics are putting out now about future climate lockdowns.
Yeah.
Mate, this is just all about control. It really is. Whatever you believe around climate change, there's a myriad of ways of dealing with the situation. But at the end of the day, you're right. The big end of town really, it isn't going to phase them much. In fact, the very, very big end of town, those outfits that I talked about before, BlackRock and Vanguard, the biggest corporations in the world, investment houses, they won't lose any money over this. They won't be stung. They will get money out of it because they shift their investments into where they see things going, and they'll probably make a lot of money. In fact, that's the even some of the most virulent greenies around the world will tell you that there is a lot of money making and scamming going on around this climate agenda. I think that's two things, and it always boils down to these two things: a lot of money making being made and a lot of control.
Yeah, that's right. And we've seen that with the pandemic, haven't we?
We did. That's the
Made the
two major elements:
richer and the poor poorer.
profits and control.
Malcolm Roberts shared something this morning. I was seeing it on Twitter about Northern Ireland. Do you see that? Northern Ireland's new climate
I
act
haven't yet.
So he said that Northern Ireland's new climate act will require removal of 500,000 cows, 700,000 sheep, and 5 million chickens to meet net zero for methane CH4. But this food is grown on rough grassland where farm crops can't be grown. Yeah, so that's something out of Northern Ireland, which I think is concerning. I mean, we're talking of they're trying to push synthetic meats and insects and all this nonsense onto us. Now they're talking about removal of, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of animals to reach that goal. I mean, it's all very concerning, and that's what I don't like about it. There's a lot of, that sort of language having to remove things that you think, well, there's got to be an after effect of that. You can't just remove 500,000 cows and expect that everything will remain the same.
That's right. The first ones that it affects is farmers, and in Ireland, I suspect there's a lot of small farmers, and so again, not hitting the big end of town. So they're the ones that are first in the firing line, and then after that, what happens in terms of meat demand or supply for the meat demand in Ireland? I mean, are you just going to import it from elsewhere? And if every country is moving towards this setup, where are you going to get it from? So then there has to be control, either through high prices, or probably, sorry, Chris, your 2 steak limit a week has just been exceeded. You can't buy any more. Here's your meat pack: two steaks and a sausage, and that's it. Go home. And you think that's silly. Right now, how many times have you been to a supermarket where you've bought a particular product and they've told you, sorry, there's a limit of 2 on that?
That's right.
It's happening already.
It is, mate. I don't find it silly at all. I see that as something that is likely to happen unless something stops it from happening. I think, 2 limits on, you've seen that throughout the pandemic: toilet paper, chicken breasts. Even this year, we've seen that when the bit of a food shortage at the beginning of the year, we've seen they reintroduced limits on foods, and it's all very concerning. I mean, our world has been turned completely upside down. And
I think it's going to continue to get turned upside down again and again, because you talked about those meat shortages. I still go into the supermarkets. I don't know if it's any different where you are, but the stuff that's lacking in the shelves. And, I'm hearing stuff from out in the US about food shortages over there and around the world. There's riots that have taken place in, I think it's Pakistan and other countries about food shortages. We're in for a hell of a ride pretty soon, a hell of a ride. And that's only going to lead to price spikes. And if you thought it was bad, people fighting over toilet paper in supermarkets, imagine when there's a shortage of food. Imagine when you walk in to the meat section and there's only 1 or 2 packs left, and the fights that'll happen over that. I don't know. I hope this doesn't happen, but I'm starting to get worried that it is going to happen.
It's very hard to switch off. I mean, when you actually look into this space and you see what's transpired over the last 3 to 4 years, and then you think, you can sort of, had all these crazy conspiracy theorists who have said this is going to happen, this will happen, and this will happen, and it all starts happening one step at a time. It's very hard to switch off and not worry about it and not think about it, because I'm well aware that even if I decide to stop thinking about it, stop having those conversations, it's going to happen. I probably can't do much myself, but I mean, I say to people all the time that when I talk about these things, and I'm sure you're the same, it's not. I'm not intending to spread fear and doom and gloom, but awareness. And I think awareness is very powerful, very powerful. If no one's aware of what's happening, then it's not going to stop.
You can't change it.
Can't change it. But if enough people are aware and they're starting to speak about it, even just having a chat to their mates at the pub about it or whatever it may be, we might see some change. But when I go down to the supermarket down your mean, I'm in Sydney, obviously. It's $5 for an iceberg lettuce and $6 for a cauliflower. It's cheaper to go out. And only that I read an article that in Victoria at the moment, it's cheaper to buy a 10 pack of nuggets than what it is to buy one lettuce.
Wow. That's frightening. But look, you're right. And that's why I love coming on podcasts like yours, because it's alternative media. It's talking about issues that the mainstream media don't talk about. And, these problems that we have that aren't talked about, well, there's no way you're going to fix them unless you actually acknowledge that you've got a problem. So these conversations can happen. Other people listen to it. You float around in some of the top the top of the charts and the podcasts. I've seen yours still up there. So a lot of people listen, and these conversations go further. So we can acknowledge the problem, and when we acknowledge the problem, then we start working out ways to fix it.
Yeah. By the way, your show you did last year had Malone on there, mate. Very, very good. Yeah, are you going to continue that, or is that just like a one-time series?
Well, particularly for that was a one-time series, but I will continue the podcast on. But that was 13 episodes I wanted to do with sort of the best of the best around COVID and the pandemic, and I think that we did that. I have got another couple of just one-offs that are about to come out, and after the election, we'll work out exactly whether I'm in the Senate or whether I'm unemployed and seeking work, and if that's the case, then I might throw myself back into the podcasting. So we'll see what happens then.
Mate, it's great, Like I remember when I seen your show up there. I think pretty sure both my show and your show were always neck to neck and at the top somewhere. And mate, that made me so happy seeing that, knowing that that these two independent guys created a show from nothing and are knocking off Channel 7, news.com.au and Ray Hadley's show and all the rest of it. Mate, I love that, because it's a community feel. Like we're in a very unique time at the moment, and we need unique voices to be there and to be countering the narrative. And mate, I love seeing that. So mate, well done on that. It was mate, I enjoyed it too. It was a really good show.
Yeah, really thank you. For those who haven't listened, you can go and hear it. I think you just need to go to any of the podcast platforms and just I think type in Conservative One or Pandemic Unmasked, or it's on my website georgechristensen.com.au, and you can just click the podcast button and you can listen to them all there.
Yeah, mate, it was fantastic. But anyway, so you're so give a bit of a breakdown, because obviously you have mentioned that you joined One Nation, because when I spoke to you the first time, you were just going to retire and sort of be done with it. So what happened? What prompted this?
Yeah, well, I hope in the future I don't say insanity, but that's probably what got me into politics in the first place. So it might be the thing that's kept
Keeps you
me
there.
here. You got to be a little bit crazy. You got to be a little bit crazy to stay in this remit, I can tell you. But look, no, the reality is that I was going to go. I was just going to retire. I had a lot of people over the course of the past year telling me to reconsider that. I mean, even the Deputy Prime Minister, former Prime Ministers, in fact, phoned me and asked me to reconsider. Obviously, they wanted me to stay in the Liberal National Party, but that was just unacceptable. I one thing that I worked out pretty soon after I made that decision not to run again was that I would not remain in the LNP post the Parliament. Like I was that aggrieved and upset at things that hadn't been done, things that had been done, that I knew that near 30 years spent in that political party was at an end. And I made that decision. I left the party. Now, Pauline Hanson and a few others that I won't go through, but Pauline Hanson certainly approached me in probably about, I can't remember exactly when, Chris, but it might have been about September, October. It was shortly after the Parliament decided to condemn me for making a speech to the Parliament on the pandemic restrictions. She contacted me and asked me how I was going, and then put it to me that I should continue on and I should run for One Nation. She wanted me to run in the seat of Dawson. I sort of had a thought about it, and I said, look, I really can't actively contemplate this while I'm serving in the government, and my view is that I need to continue serving in the political party that I was elected to right till the end, and so I couldn't give her an answer on that, and it's something that I probably wouldn't contemplate until the election was called. Well, long story short, she said, well, thanks for being upfront, but that doesn't suit us. We'll need to just move ahead. And so they selected a candidate for Dawson, and they'd selected their Senate team. Now, I'm glad they did that, because actually at the point in time, which was around March, I think, that I did start actively contemplating whether I would do something else. I had firmly decided that I'd run my race in the House of Representatives. I don't want to get boring, but I'm just going to quickly say that quite rightly, when you're a House of Representatives member, you are chasing tail a lot, because there's a lot of people that have a lot of problems in your local electorate. They come to you seeking them to be fixed, and it can be everything from the neighbour's barking dog and a blocked drain, which are council issues, through to Centrelink and immigration issues, which are federal. That takes up probably about 80% of your time, and the reality is you don't have much time to chase around the larger issues like ones we'd been discussing. And that's where the Senate comes in. I mean, there's an old joke that we have. What do you call a constituent in a senator's office? The answer is lost, because senators aren't like House of Representative members. They don't have local constituents per se. Everyone in the state is their constituent, but really when they go to see their member of parliament, they go and see whoever the local bloke or the local woman is. And senators therefore get to focus on these much bigger issues. So I was interested in the Senate, but I thought that it had all cut off. But then Pauline phoned me, and Pauline was the one who asked me, would you like to be part of our Senate ticket? And I was a bit surprised by that offer, and I said, I'll think about it. And I came back to her and said, yes, I will do it. She did tell me from the get-go that the number 2 spot had already been offered, because I, didn't want to contemplate things. If there was something that was orchestrated, then it would have might have been in the different spot, but it wasn't orchestrated. I just simply accepted that 3rd spot. It's a very difficult spot to win, but mate, anything's possible given the last 2 years we've been through in this country.
Yeah, mate, it's definitely possible. And I see your posts all the time on social media, mate. You've got a large following and a large number of people that believe in what you do. And mate, you've got a strong team, One Nation. You're building a
Yeah.
nice team there. And, when I speak to people about. I never tell people who to vote for. I just say, listen, vote for the minor parties, put them first, put the major parties last. I'll leave it at that because it's an individual choice, right? Everyone has their own preference, and but mate, a lot of people come back to me with One Nation as being the preferred simply because they've been around the longest. All right, back from the minor interruption. So as I was saying, yeah, a lot of people that I speak to regarding the upcoming election, a lot of them are going to put the minor parties first. But some of them go into more detail and they state that One Nation for them is the best choice because they've been around the longest. But as you said at the beginning, it's not necessarily, and you're a member of One Nation, that the main thing is just to get a freedom-friendly party into some form of power to help block troubling legislation in the Senate.
Mm. And I'll tell you, Chris, how I'm going to vote. I'm not going to tell anyone else how they should vote. I'll tell you how I'm going to vote. I'm obviously I'm going to vote below the line, and that might be something that Pauline Hanson's One Nation might not even recommend. They'll probably recommend above the line, as most political parties do. I'm going to vote below the line. I'm going to vote for myself, obviously. I'm going to vote for all of the pro-freedom candidates and parties that are on that list, and that's going to mean there'll probably be 20 or more different candidates to pick from, for whether it's One Nation, UAP, Liberal Democrats, Great Australian Party, IMOP. There's probably a range of them that I haven't said. There's a few independents that are running as well in Queensland, independent Senate candidates. And I know this might be controversial, but there's members of the major parties, predominantly the Liberal National Party, who have been pro-freedom, and so they would get my vote. And some people that aren't running, like Alex Antic and Gerard Rennick, I think they've been very good. They're not running, though, this time round, as far as I know. I think Matt Canavan's been very good. He crossed the floor on a bill in the Senate to ban vaccine passports. And in the House of Reps, not in my local seat, but Lou O'Brien, who's the member for Wide Bay, also crossed the floor to vote down vaccine passports. So there will be some, but by and large, you can leave off if you don't want to support the major parties. You don't have to have them on your Senate ticket. Don't even put them on there. I would encourage people, though, to exhaust every single freedom candidate on that list. Even if there's some that you don't like, forget the personalities, please, this time round. It's the issues that matter. Really, it's the issues.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's going to be quite surprising, the election. I think there's a lot more people than definitely the media would make out that are looking to vote for freedom parties. I think a lot of everyday Australians are sick and tired of the way they've been forced to live for the past few years. And I do believe we'll see change. Now, with regards to pretty much the mandate dropping across the country, like, one after the next, it seems like over the past month, do you think that's purely a political play?
It's just very convenient, I think. It's very, that does roll around in my head. Isn't it interesting? Just before an election, suddenly all of the mandates that about going into pubs and clubs have ended. I know that might have ended a little while ago in New South Wales. It ended in Queensland just recently. I don't know. New South Wales probably been the most liberal in the real sense of the word in terms of relaxations on these mandates. Queensland still has them for a lot of things. I haven't come to terms exactly with what's going on in New South Wales, but in Queensland there's still teachers that don't have a job, still police officers that don't have a job, AMBOs, healthcare workers, doctors, which is healthcare workers, I guess, aged care workers, disability care workers. They're still all without work simply because of these vaccine mandates. Now, they're by and large government imposed mandates, but there's also The private sector that are doing it as well. Some airlines are doing it, like Qantas. There's also mining companies that are doing it, like BHP,
Mm.
and port workers. Dalrymple Bay Coal Terminal near my electorate has vaccine mandates. So they're private companies that have imposed it. So this isn't over. There are definitely people in our community hurting. And look, quite frankly, I, like everyone else, I went with a few months without going into a restaurant or a cafe or a bar. I mean, it probably didn't hurt me. It probably helped the family budget and the waistline. But
Mm.
you know, the reality is that that's the low end of it. It should never have occurred, mind you. It's wrong. It's a
Mm.
breach of my rights and everyone else's rights who has refused service on the basis of not wanting to have a medical treatment that is only provisionally approved and doesn't have long-term safety data with it. But what's more of a breach of human rights is when your ability to earn a dime, to earn a dollar, is actually cut off. And I yeah, I'm going to use it. I hate it. I was going to say I hate these people, but I hate when these people say that there are no mandates. I've heard that
Mm.
before, that,
Yeah.
oh, the vaccine's not mandated. Well, tell me, what is it when someone puts the metaphorical gun to your head and says you either take the jab or you lose your job? It could have been a profession that you've been in for years, that you've had to work long and hard to, and you'll go out of that profession, and what can you go into? What can you go into?
That's
You
right.
know, so uh, this is the worst of the worst, and it's not over yet, and it won't be over until we send this huge message to the major parties that this needs to be fixed. All of these people, as far as I'm concerned, who lost their jobs to these jab mandates, need to be reinstated and more so compensated for the time that that they were just cast on the scrap heap.
Yeah, it's bad. It's a major violation of our human rights to earn money for our families. And only the other day, I saw Dan Andrews was standing down over 2,500 teachers down there in Victoria due to the mandates. And quite a few teachers have reached out to me in the past few weeks that were going to be impacted by that. Just tragic, really. Like to hear them their story, and that's all they've ever done. Straight out of school, straight into uni, become a teacher. To have that just taken away, no wrongdoing of their own, mind you, there's nothing wrong.
Yeah,
It's even now, when we like 6 months ago or more when they were introduced, we didn't have much to fire back at. We could say that it was wrong, or which it definitely was, in terms of violating our human rights to refuse a medical procedure. But now we have the data to back it up and say, listen, you
yes,
can't tell me they make any difference. They don't. So what do you like?
yeah.
Why are you still playing this game for?
Yeah, well, you're right. I mean, it was wrong no matter what the justification for it was, but the justification was sort of beating our argument about it being wrong. Well, the justification for it is just now proven to be completely and utterly bogus.
Mm.
Um, but they're not letting go, and they're not letting go because, we go back to the climate change thing. It's almost become like a religion. Branch Covidians, they they can't let go of it. They can't turn around and say, "Oh, we're going to get rid of these mandates," because, in a sense, it means that they were wrong,
Mm.
and they don't want to be proven wrong. They don't want to accept that they were wrong. Uh, and look, a lot of people have had COVID. I don't know if you've had it. I've had it, and mate, it was the man flu. That's what it was for me.
Mm.
Let me correct for the censors out there. I'm not saying that COVID was the flu. What I'm saying is that it felt like the man flu to me. I've had the man flu, and that's what it was like. I moped around in bed for a couple of days and wanted chicken soup, and stocked a big pile of what do you call them? The soothers and the bloody the butter menthols. But mate, after about 4 days, if it wasn't COVID, I would have been going back to work.
Mm.
So and I wasn't vaccinated.
Mm.
So um, given that that is the impact largely that most people have experienced, what's the rationale for all of this? There is none. I mean, and this is not just George Christensen saying it. The World Health Organization on their website actually says that the vast majority of people who get COVID will experience mild to medium symptoms. But we're acting like it's down. I mean, I heard Anthony Albanese, who's just had COVID, and hasn't really knocked him about that badly. And he's on the news, and I noted his language. It was almost hilarious. He was, on the one hand, trying to downplay it, and then realizing when he was downplaying it, I can't downplay COVID. And he said, almost 1 million people have sadly had this disease. I mean, like, you're talking about it like it's like cancer. It wasn't like cancer. It was like the man flu, and it was like that for the vast bulk of blokes, and the woman flu, I guess, for the women as well. But
and I can't. I tell you what, I can't catch it. No, just I can't. I've been around. I've been at a few events, big events with thousands of people. I live my life as normal and always have. I haven't changed my lifestyle. Never. And mate, I can't. My wife can't catch it. My kids haven't had it. Obviously, none of us are vaccinated, but yet family and friends. And it's just an observation. And I made this claim the other day on Twitter. Just my observation now. It seems like this is not a statement. I'm not passing this off as a fact. I'm just sharing my personal observation. It seems to me the people that are vaccinated seem to be getting it more frequently and easily, and it's writing them off for longer than the people that I know that have caught it that are unvaccinated. I mean, my older brother, who just turned 46 yesterday, he had it about a month ago. And mate, I dropped him off some things, the good stuff, the vitamin D, the vitamin C, the quercetin, things like that, the old horse dewormer. And mate,
yeah, I was using that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mate, I was using a prescribed version.
Yeah, that's right. Well, it's a prescribed version, but just going with the narrative, mate, the old horse dewormer.
Yep.
Mate, he was in bed for probably the first day, mainly because of a headache. He did say he had a very bad headache. And then the next day he was slowly getting back on his feet again. He was fine. And mate, that's there's a guy I know who mate had it, and within a day or two he's doing 5 kilometers around the house in the backyard, out the front, running around, trying to keep because he's a fitness fanatic. But he was doing 5Ks the day or two after he found out he had it. So, that's the story for a lot of people, that it's just like a flu, like a cold, in terms of symptoms anyway.
No, not denying that some people have died of it. I mean, I'm not denying that at all. I'm also not understating the fact that some people have died of it. Any death's tragedy. But when we look to the deaths, we see that in the vast bulk of cases, just like it was over in the US and Australia here, there are underlying causes. In a vast majority of cases, there are underlying causes of most deaths. And on top of that, the average age of death from COVID in Australia for women, I think, was 84, 85 it might have been. I can't remember the figures exactly, but it was around about 80, 85 or 86 for women, I think, and it might have been 84, 83 for men. And then you went and had a look at the average life expectancy of Australians, and in both cases, it was under. So in other words, the average person in Australia who died of COVID-19 lived longer than the average person in Australia.
That's right.
So, again, all deaths are tragedies, that's for sure. But this was something that really was not extraordinary, extraordinary at all.
And let me tell you, more children die each year from drowning in swimming pools and bathtubs than they do from COVID. So, I mean, by that logic, do we start banning swimming pools? No more swimming pools. The kids are no longer allowed to have baths. If we find out your kids are having baths, I mean,
don't say it too loud, or the people that'll start trying to do that, Chris.
They will. But as a nation, I mean, we never make decisions based on the worst case scenario or the best case scenario. We make decisions based on the average, right? Average. We can't make decisions on the worst case scenario because it would inconvenience 99% of the population. And for the same reason, we can't, make decisions based on the best case scenario. But what we've found with COVID, and only COVID, no other virus, only COVID, is that all the decisions are based on the worst case outcomes.
Yep.
And that doesn't make sense, and it doesn't feel right. And that proves to you that something's not right based on that decision-making process.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, that I think that what we're talking about now is sort of the. I'm glad you said that it means something's not quite right, because you could accept that, this is just because fear and panic swept so many people because of the initial assessments around COVID deaths. But look, I think that policymakers are a lot smarter than that. And somewhere along the line, this went from the fear and panic to opportunism. And the opportunistic element was around profits that a lot of big companies made. A lot, as you said it before, a lot of the rich got richer, a lot of the poor got poorer. Main Street got hurt and Wall Street got rich. All these drug companies that have just been making money hand over fist, the largest profits that they've ever seen. And then massive companies as well, like Amazon, for instance, that did a roaring trade during lockdowns while mum and dad businesses just went broke because no one was allowed out. So some people have said that what we've seen is the largest transference of wealth in this period than we've ever seen before. And on top of that, there's the control element, where you have people like Klaus Schwab talking about how COVID-19 presents a great opportunity for a great reset of everything. And when you have a look at the measures they're talking about in the Great Reset, again, it's all about control. It's all about controlling how we live, what we eat, what we do, how our economy functions. That also impacts upon us. So I think opportunism did grab hold of this entire pandemic, and you're right in what you said. So it didn't make sense. None of it made sense how the policy responses were being done, and when things don't make sense, it often means there's something else afoot. And what was afoot was money and control.
Yeah. You know what? Back to Klaus Schwab for a second. If there was an evil pyramid, he's firmly at the top of that. I'm telling you now, I watched an interview of his not too long ago, and he was talking about the threat of a cyber attack, right?
Yeah.
And I've learned to listen very carefully to what he says, because he seems to be able to predict the future, right? So I was listening to him, and he said his exact words were, I'll try and do his accent the best I can. Well, we need to vaccinate the internet to produce the digital antibodies. We need to vaccinate I'm thinking, look at the language. Look at the language. These people are obsessed with vaccination. Even when they're referring to internet protection, they're talking about vaccinating the internet. I'm thinking, there's something not right with this man. There's something seriously wrong with him. And you know what? Who elected him?
No one.
No one elected him. No one elected the likes of Bill Gates, but yet they seem to be controlling indirectly controlling the way that we live our lives here in Australia. And it's so bizarre. I mean, why are these governments listening? Why are they buying into this whole World Economic Forum? I mean, I know you've got Justin Trudeau, who's a young global leader. You've also got Macron, who's a young global leader. There's quite a few of them that are in power now. And Klaus has said it himself that they're going to penetrate the cabinets of governments around the world, and they've done that.
Yeah, well, look, they have done that. They've done that quite successfully. They've been going around for a long while, this World Economic Forum, and running these youth leadership programs, and so they've cultivated leaders around the world. Even our health minister was a former director of strategy for the World Economic Forum, and there's other senators. Senator Andrew Bragg, I think, who's one of the World Economic Forum Young Global Leaders, and I'm assuming there's probably some on the Labor side as well. I just haven't can't rattle them off
Who's
off the top of my head.
Who's Hanson Young? Is someone I can't remember
Yeah,
her first name.
Sarah Hanson Young from the
That's her.
Greens. She's a WEF alumni as well. So there's a lot of these people, but I guess you know, how did they get influence? Well, they started off having all of the world's wealthiest, you know, and then they started inviting celebrities, and then they invite the politicians, and they invite them all to Davos, and they all can rub shoulders together. So therefore, some two-bit politician from Australia gets invited to this thing, and can rub shoulders with some people that they'd never would get to meet at any other forums. You know, your Bill Gates of the world, your Warren Buffetts, and it makes them feel all tingly and special. And next thing they're sort of being told that if you are good boys and girls and you go away and you pursue our agenda, we'll invite you to the next one. And it can be happening as simple as that, I think. But Klaus Schwab is an interesting character. Because he's publicly known. You know, if you do believe in that pyramid, I don't think he'd be at the very top of it because he's out there. He's out there publicly, and he's out there also in other ways. Look at his beliefs around transhumanism. I mean, this guy is weird. He has views which I doubt that any mainstream thinking, feeling person would actually agree with. And that is that there needs to be a fusion between humans and technology. And this leads to where people are talking about digitizing the brain, having some microchips added into us that control aspects, enhance humanity. And that's actually a very strong part of the World Economic Forum's Great Reset agenda, this enhancement of humanity. And I think that's frightening, man. That's the stuff of dystopian science fiction films.
But it's real. Anyone listening
now
to
they're
this
making
now,
a reality, yeah.
Yeah, anyone that's listening to this now, I'm telling you, go online, it won't take you long. Just do a Google search for the World Economic Forum. And I've actually seen a video of one of the main doctors who is part of the advisory panel of the World Economic Forum go on about transhumanism in detail for about 15 minutes. I've watched it. I know exactly what they want to do. And, that's why I'm a bit skeptical of Elon Musk. Only for that reason is that he bought Twitter. But I know he's involved in a lot of things that they want to do. I know he's worked on a microchip now that can actually, implant it in your brain and control your limbs. I know he's working on that. And I know he's done some trials on monkeys, I believe, for that. That's why I'm a little bit skeptical of Musk, because I know he's involved in a lot of what they're trying to do. Hopefully he's a mutual party and he's innocent, I hope, because I quite like him. He's a funny character.
Yeah.
But, I mean, it's not a conspiracy.
He's good with what he's done in sort of salvaging Twitter from censorship, although that's yet to be seen. I mean, I know that people are coming back, but the question is, can we still, if I go on Twitter and I post something which is deemed politically incorrect, how long's my profile going to stay up there for? So I don't know. It's going to be interesting whether we see that play out in reality. But anyway, all of the rabid left are extremely upset about Elon Musk buying Twitter, so that's got to be a good thing. But yeah, look, the other things that he does, I'm also skeptical about, and but on this, he's probably on the side of the angels at the moment. I've got to say.
Yeah, mate, I didn't realize. I use Twitter primarily to just create my posts for Instagram and Facebook. I don't really use Twitter as my main platform, but recently I started spending more time on it. Like, Jesus Christ, I'll tell you what, some of the people on there from the left, mate, they're almost insane. Well, they are.
Yeah.
They're insane.
Yep.
I didn't know those type of people existed. Like, they'll comment back to me with some hate, like, I hope you die. And then I'll look at their bio, and it's got 3 vaccine things. It's got a Ukrainian flag. It's got get vaccinated, save lives, and wham. I'm thinking, you just fucking wanted to kill me.
You also forgot the pronouns. They probably put the pronouns in
That's
there
what
too.
the pronouns on there. And I'm thinking, how you're all about this, but then 5 minutes ago you comment on my post that you hope I die. Well, what's wrong? Are you mentally unwell? Right. But there's a lot of those people on Twitter, a lot.
There is. It's a scary place for that. I largely stay off it, but the recent changes probably had me back on there posting a bit. But I don't want to engage with those people. Those people have lost it. They're never going to be changed. The only thing that's going to change them is if it is ever found out that the vaccines caused something irreparably wrong with human functionality. That would be the only thing that would make them sort of wonder whether it was all worth it. But then again, maybe not. I heard a story about a bloke who actually, due to an adverse reaction, lost a leg. I think he might have lost both legs. And in the interview that they did with him, he said words to the effect of that it was worth it to keep people safe. I thought, wow,
really?
Wow, you can lose both your legs and have that reaction. That's full on.
That's correct, mate. There's some crazy people in the world. But you know what? I think there needs to be a slogan. It's very important, is that there's a difference between hate speech and speech that you hate. That is such an important fact, because if I go out there and make a claim, which I have done, and I know that the I can't remember her name, you know who I'm talking about, over in the Northern Beaches, said that she's trying to say that transgenders shouldn't be competing in
Catherine Devers,
Mate, she's copped it.
Yeah, she has. Yep.
She's copped it. And I'm thinking, well, there's nothing, it's not hate speech. She's not speaking directly to everybody. She's just saying that it's not fair for sport. I mean,
in fact, in my home city here, the local newspaper has interviewed a transgendered person here in Mackay, who's actually come out and said exactly the same thing. And they actually said that if they competed in a sport against other women, it wouldn't be fair. And they actually proposed something that I was unique. And they said, well, perhaps what can happen is that they have an open sort of competition where transgendered people and men and women that want to compete against them all go into it. And I thought, well, that's a unique solution to it. But at the end of the day, here is this person is getting pilloried as being anti-transgender, when a transgendered person in Mackay is actually saying exactly the same thing as that Liberal candidate.
The most famous transgender in the world would be Caitlyn Jenner, by far, right?
Yep.
And she said the same thing.
Yep.
And actually, when Caitlyn was Bruce was an Olympian.
Yep.
So he's a professional athlete, and for now to say that it's not right. What are you going to say? He's against transgenders too when he is one? You can't say that. Mm-hmm. But it's not the debate. I mean, you're entitled to have an opinion on an issue concerning a group of people without, meaning that you hate the people. It's not the case. I mean, I don't find transgenders attractive, but doesn't mean I hate them. I don't hate them at all. But that's how they'll take it.
If you want to understand where the left comes from with this and others, this whole LGBTI, and there's a whole range of other initials that I've forgotten, but this whole movement, they see this as black and white, pardon the pun. It's black and white. They see it like racism. And so, if there was anyone who said that a black person couldn't come into a store, couldn't come into a cafe, couldn't participate in a particular event, well, that's racism. We all recognise that as what it is, and it's wrong. It's evil, and that is exactly how they see these issues. To say that I'm not agreeing with it. I'm just trying to explain it. And once you understand that, you understand a lot about it, right? To say that a transgendered person can't participate in a particular sport in the gender category that they identify with is like to them saying that a black person can't participate in the sport. And so when you understand that, you understand also other issues that are behind this. When you talked about free speech before, we actually have laws in this country that are against racial vilification. And so there are certain things that you can't say because we deem racism as a society, I guess, to be an evil. And they would believe the same thing, that there are things that you can't and shouldn't say around these matters. Now, I got to say that I would vehemently disagree with someone that put forward a racist proposal. But I actually wouldn't think that that person should get in trouble with the law for putting forward a racist proposal. Therefore, I think that these racial vilification laws are wrong. But by the same notion, I think that people should be able to say what they want in regards to LGBTIQ issues. They should be able to say whatever they want about it without fear of getting hauled before some form of court. But those who are very passionate about these issues see it as black and white. This is racism. This is like racism, and therefore all of that discrimination, which is like racism, all of that speech, which is like racist speech, should be eliminated, banned, made illegal.
I understand a part of what they're trying to say, and I would agree that if you were to refuse service to somebody who's a transgender person, that probably is wrong. I mean, if we're talking about going to a restaurant, for example, and you refuse to let them in because they're a transgender, that's wrong. I think we all agree that's wrong. But we're talking, this particular issue is about sport. Now, a black person, an Asian, a white person compete in a sport, it's generally fair. Like there's no advantage for either race. But when we're talking about, a woman who used to be a man competing in a female sport, I mean, that's why they banned performance enhancing drugs from sport, isn't it? I mean, I can't just start playing the NRL and show up and be loaded with testosterone and other steroids. That's unfair to the opposition, right? And I think of it that same way, that, okay, fair enough. Yes, maybe they're receiving hormone treatment. Maybe they've got long hair and have a female's name. That's fine. But they've also had a whole life going through the teenage years, through puberty, developing as a male. The bone structure, the bone density, the shoulders, the muscle mass. It's all not necessarily as much muscle mass, because that obviously does change with hormones, but especially the bone structure. Your bone structure doesn't change. Right? You're gonna be like, it's very obvious to anyone. You don't need to be a biologist to know that it would cause an unfair. And we're seeing that now with the swimmer in the US. I mean, she's tearing through the women's division. And in my opinion, it's unfair and it's unjust. I mean, if you can imagine being a parent, like I've got daughters, and if I spent their whole lives taking them to training, and they're doing all they can to be the best they can, and then, a competitor comes in who used to be a man and starts taking everything away from them, well, I'll have the shits as their parent. Well, that's unfair. That's not right. So, I think we have to look at it, from an individual. I mean, we're talking about sport in this particular case, and as was what was her name again, from Northern Beaches?
I think it's Catherine Davis.
Davis, yeah. She's speaking about the sport issue. She's not speaking about everyday life in terms of going into supermarkets and restaurants and all that. So what she says is right, and I would agree with her that it is unfair. Yep. But that doesn't mean I hate them.
Yeah. Look, I think, though, that the larger issue here is one about freedom of speech, and it is under attack. again, whatever rationale they have, there's people out there that want to silence what Catherine Devies or anyone else who says something critical of the situation. They want to silence them. They don't, and because it's not against the law, they pile on in this way, and it is quite a vicious and vindictive, and it can be a violent pile on. And more than that, they then want to change the law to actually make it illegal for people to say this. And we've got to decide as a democracy, do we agree with this situation where speech that is philosophical, that is ideological, that is political shouldn't be allowed? I mean, if we do, then I actually don't think I don't think you got the right to call yourself a democracy, really, too much anymore. Not a full democracy, because for a full democracy to actually have, proper debate, proper policy decisions being made, you need to have discussion. And if you can't discuss certain things, then, well, you lack an element of democracy, as far as I'm concerned.
Mate, it's this woke culture, and before I let you go, I read last night that apparently in the New South Wales government they've been told they can no longer say mate in the workplace.
It's insane.
Did you see that?
That's insane. I did see it, and it's like, well, there's going to be a lot more truth that's going to come out now, because the word mate's usually put in there where you can't remember someone's name. So you're just going to have to go up to them and say, I can't remember your name.
I can't remember your name. But that's insanity. That's mate is just a term. Like, it's just a mate. I've just called you mate again. It's something that concerns me greatly, because, mate, if they end up, mate, I'll be sacked very quickly.
Yeah, it's woke crap is what it is. It is completely and utterly. And look, I think that good luck to them. Keep on pushing that sort of stuff, because the more and more you do it, the more and more people are going to snap out of this crap. It is just, it shows you where this agenda goes. Anything that they think is remotely discriminatory, sexist, will go, and things that are as innocent as the word mate will go, just like the other one, sadly, that seems to have disappeared from our lingo, Sheila. That's probably
Sheila.
gone as well,
Old Sheila. That's what. Yeah, my dad just Sheila's here to Sheila's. Yeah, he's a big fan of that. But mate, like, you don't hear it anymore.
No, you don't.
Oh, it's a shame. Anyway, George, mate, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. Welcome on any time. Best of luck.
Thank you.
And mate, all the best to your future. And let's hope that this election is the beginning of change that we desperately need.
Here's definitely hoping, because we don't need another 2 years like we've experienced at any point in the future.
No, George, pleasure, mate. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chris.